us about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my tickets!
Everybody loves Hippo Toes.
Scary dog!
Dancing at Blurnsville.
Futurama.
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast TV party tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is Star Trek. Lower Decks, Season 2, brought to you by the good people at Paramount+. The second season of Star Trek Lower Decks follows the various missions and adventures of the lower deckers, lower-ranking officers with menial jobs on the USS Cerritos, one of Starfleet's least important starships. The second season premiered on Paramount Plus on August 12th, 2021, ran for 10 episodes until October 14th, and has given way to a third season. This season featured many connections and references to past Star Trek series, such as Star Trek The Next Generation, including several actors returning as guest stars. And joining me as he did for season 1, it's David Wright. David Wright, how are you?
I'm doing good, ready to talk some Star Trek. I always like talking Star Trek, unless it was all the Star Trek between old Star Trek and now.
I was having a discussion with a new friend that I made, and she was telling me how much she's really been enjoying Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
And I said, that's on the list. We're going to get to it eventually. But I said and I thought this comment was funny. She was like, I told her we were reviewing Lower Decks tonight. She was like, there's a lot of people out there that think this is currently the best Star Trek out there, which is a really funny thing to say. And I think you and I touched on that in our first review of this is so much better than it had any right to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it lacks kind of the depth and philosophy of sort of golden era Star Trek. But as far as just decent character writing, good scripting, and just sort of nailing the feel of Star Trek, it's the best thing we've had in a long, long time.
I'm reminded of something Red Letter Media said with reference to Star Wars. I actually just finished watching Obi-Wan today, and they made a comment, and I want to say this might have been around the time of Rogue One, where they were like, all Star Wars is ATSTs and lightsabers, and it's just such a small world. As much as they try to play in that world and expand it, it seems like there's a limited scope as to what you can do with it, as opposed to Star Trek, and specifically Lower Decks, where especially this season, this kind of where I wanted to be in our discussion, Star Trek Lower Decks Season 2 really seemed to play firmly in the established world of Star Trek, taking both popular things and not so popular things and very niche things and only the stuff real Trekkies would know, and playing with it and messing around with it, doing different things and doing it in a way that's entertaining and funny, while also giving us good character arcs and stories. And it's we say it's one of the best Star Treks out there, but what does that mean? It means the world doesn't feel nearly as small as the world of Star Wars. What do you think?
Yeah, well, one thing about Lower Decks is like the idea is this is like the unimportant people in Star Trek or in Starfleet. So these are the people who go in after the Enterprise leaves to sort of do the actual boring, mundane work of establishing diplomatic relations, offering aid, stacking all the boxes, all the menial dull jobs, or ferrying diplomats. It's basically a show about the USS Hood, which was like a old ship that kept on having to like ferry diplomats or come in after the Enterprise to do stuff, but you never actually saw anything happening on that ship. So right. You get the feeling that this is a very small ship in a very big organization in a very big universe. So you know that there's tons of stuff happening all over the place, and this is just sort of one little corner of that view. It's almost kind of like the Hobbits in Lord of the Rings, where there's these very literally small people, but then you start to see that there's this huge world around them, and even though we don't get to see the whole thing, we just see a couple of stories in that world. There's that sense that there's other things going on all over the place.
Yeah,
and there's so much more to do.
It'd be like what if they made a show about the janitors that work at the Avengers Tower?
Kind of, yeah, but sort of make that fun and interesting. Which, I mean, I think there's a few good jokes you could get there, but I'm not sure you could really get a
They actually did something like that. Are you familiar with Damage Control?
No, I'm not.
Damage Control is a 4-issue limited series that came out many, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was literally about the cleanup and construction crew that goes in after the superheroes have their way with the city.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really funny concept.
Yeah. Again, I'm not sure how much you can get out of that. There's only probably a handful of jokes you can do. But
yeah.
So trying to find my train of thought here again. But and they've sort of addressed Lower Decks a little bit in previous Star Trek shows. There's been like 1 or 2 episodes of Next Generation and Voyager where they sort of deal with, the crews that are not at the top, just people other than the bridge crew and sort of their perspective on things.
It felt like there was a lot more of that in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah,
especially with like the O'Brien character.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because O'Brien was like a transporter technician on the Enterprise in Next Generation. Like he was not a very important character at the start of the show, and he got a bit more time throughout the series. It was only in Deep Space Nine where he became the chief engineer on Deep Space Nine that the character really kind of got fully fleshed out and was able to do his own thing. Yeah. And I think like as I mean, I don't want to turn this into a Star Wars review as much as I understand what Rich Evans says when Star Wars is now creatively bankrupt. I somewhat disagree because I think the problem is they keep on wanting to go back to the Skywalkers and the Emperor and just keep on like making everything connected to that because that's the fan service. Whereas when you have shows like The Mandalorian, which sort of goes for the most part, we're just not going to do any of that. We're just going to show this one bounty hunter, out in the ass end of the galaxy, just doing his job. And sort of expand on that. Or in Solo, they sort of do like, well, let's look into the world of smugglers and syndicates and crime. Like you can go other directions in the Star Wars universe and tell interesting stories in them. It's just there's kind of always this desire to sort of pull themselves back to like, well, people want to see Luke Skywalker, kill a bunch of people with his lightsaber because I remember that.
Right, but I think that also goes to the strength of Star Trek, and I too don't want to compare and contrast Star Wars and Star Trek all for the next hour. We could, but that we're here to talk Lower Decks. God damn it!
Yeah.
But I do think that even the fans of Star Trek are much more willing to be shown something that isn't Kirk related or Jean-Luc Picard related. Like,
I mean, you look at the history, and when they first announced Next Generation, there was a huge fan backlash. Like, they didn't have the internet like we do today, but like there was like protests with signs outside the Paramount Studios. If it's not Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, it's not Star Trek, and like there's this huge backlash because it was a big change. And like the first couple of seasons of Next Generation are pretty rough. There's a couple of jewels in there, but the show very much struggled to find its feet, and it was only until the third season that it kind of really started to figure out what it was doing and very much sort of codified how Star Trek would work from then on until J.J. Abrams and Alex Kurtzman got involved. But like even there's still like people that don't like Deep Space Nine found it's not on a starship and we don't really like that. That's not really what Star Trek is, or it's kind of too dark and gritty. There's like all this stuff with war and character drama. That's not the Star Trek I grew up with. And Enterprise making it a prequel series instead of a sequel, and how that sort of.
And then there was Voyager, where Janeway was trying to build a ship up every week.
Yeah. There's always been detractors every time Star Trek has done something new, but I do think that Star Trek has managed to reinvent itself or expand upon itself a bit more successfully, probably just given the nature of its premise, and that you can go to different places and do different things, and it's been established that you don't have to follow the same set of characters around over and over and over again.
One of the things that I liked about this season of Lower Decks, which again I think goes to its strength, there was a lot of references made to previous Star Trek shows regarding aliens or just kind of jokes about some of the Star Trek tropes.
Yeah.
There's a whole bit they do about coming back to life. And then, of course, the gal that plays, oh gosh, what's her name? Beckett, Tawny Newsome, just runs off a list of different ways you can come back to life. Not the least was a reference to Spock in Star Trek 3.
Yeah. So they even play around with that when they're doing the simulation training of different things. Rutherford has to go in and do the self-sacrifice himself to save up the ship, like in Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
except he can't open the handle to the door because it's so hot.
So there's a lot of that in this season. It seems like there was more of it this season than there was in the first one. Like, you and I talked about the first season, and it's got that Rick and Morty feel, because those are the people that worked on Rick and Morty also worked on this.
Yeah, but I think they've distanced themselves from that quite a bit now.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like the first season, it felt like they were going for irreverent, and then eventually they figured out that that's not really what people wanted. You can do irreverent, but I think the master you really want to serve is playing around with the star.
Yeah, I think they kind of just like, wait a minute, nobody upstairs cares what we're doing. What the heck? Let's actually make a show.
I think beyond that, a lot of season 2 is, again, playfully making fun of stuff from previous Star Trek. And that's very rich for fans like you and I, especially you, who have more of a memory for this sort of thing than I do. There are episodes that full on reference stuff that happened previously, and those got the biggest laughs out of me.
Yeah, and I think especially with Picard season 2, they've sort of the team working on Star Trek, they've sort of mastered the member berries for Star Trek. They know how to reference obscure stuff and throw it into the show, and then yes, hey, that's a thing I remember. And for some people, that's all they need. But I think where you get a show that's goes better is like Lower Decks. Even if you take out all the member berries, you're still left with like a decent drama with characters and interesting problems and situations. Like you don't really need to be steeped in Star Trek to appreciate the show, I think, though it certainly does help.
It definitely helps. I think it gives you a greater appreciation for the show. One of the things that they talked about this season, they seem to have abandoned it midway through, but I guess coming out of the first season, Beckett and her mom, who is the captain, came to an understanding, and they were going to work together. And of course, when we start off season 2, that's strained, and it's abandoned about 2 or 3 episodes later. So what did you think of the continued story of the mom and the daughter working together, but the daughter is still very much like bucking authority, and the mom is still trying to figure out what to do with her? And they joked about throwing her in the brig in the first season a handful of times, and they do it at least once in season 2.
Yeah, I think that they did a good job in sort of giving a sort of realistic explanation for why it fell apart. That these two still they clash too much, and it doesn't quite work for them being totally in step with each other. And then they sort of add in like sort of Ransom's jealousy of how Mariner basically gets to run over everyone because she's got this special position within the crew. And and they do it, in the hilarious, he gets God powers and just goes on a rampage. Sir, there's a giant head coming up from the surface of the planet. What? But I do like how at the end when the captain, I can never remember her name either. When she says, like, you know what, this isn't working, I don't like this, and Mariner says, yeah, I don't like this either, and then it's like, yeah, well, okay, I'm sending you to the brig. Thanks, Mom, love you too. But she does mention that. Like they should still do the odd team up, but yeah, we should probably go back to you doing stuff behind my back. So it's not a complete backslide to the status quo. And you even see over the course of the series them doing more mother-daughter bonding, like doing recreational activities together, spending time in the.
And that was the thing about the mom. But the mom comes across a little bit more like an antagonist in the first season. The second season. She's a little less perfect than she was presented as in season 1. Season 1, it definitely felt like, especially the way it starts, it's almost, like she's really going after Beckett, like she's trying to get her thrown off the ship.
Yeah, well, I think first season it's more like my daughter is not living the life that I want her to live. She's not pursuing a career, and we know that Mariner is a very capable person. She's got a lot of experience, and if she really applied herself to working up the chain of command, she would rise incredibly quickly.
Well, you bring that up. Now I want to touch on that, because 2 and 3 times I feel like in season 2 she said why she won't get promoted, or why she doesn't take things seriously, or why she won't connect with anyone else on the ship, outside of on a surface level. She talks about everybody else gets promoted, and then so she doesn't want to make friends. She doesn't want to get to know people. This happens with the gal who plays the green alien.
Tendi.
Tendi. Like, she doesn't want to get close with Tendi because Tendi will eventually get promoted and she'll move on and she'll leave her. And so a lot of this season deals with Beckett's attachment. issues.
Well, they even have that bit where she sabotages Boimler when he gets to move ahead a little bit, where he gets some positive notice from Ransom, and he gets put on a more risky mission that would be sort of him to pull him off. And of course, eventually Boimler finds out about this and is not pleased. But yeah, we see how I don't think we've really dealt with what was the event or events that sort of caused her to abandon her career and stay in the lower decks. But she certainly has this attitude of lower decks gets things done. The bridge officers are just a bunch of social climbers who are obsessed with protocol and kissing the right butts.
Well, I think the way she's written, she says that stuff out loud as more of a tough guy thing. But I think really, I think the meat of that character lies in the fact that if she pursues promotion, she will inevitably be moved away from there's something about her character that seems to treasure the social element of being on a Starfleet ship more so than the actual job. Like, there's something about the camaraderie that she likes. There's something about again, those social aspects that she seems to gravitate towards. And so she's like, I'm gonna find, and they even talk about this with Boimler, where it's like, well, I'm going to find the weakest guy on the ship to be friends with because he'll never go anywhere and I'll always have somebody. Yeah. Which I think is interesting. Because it does talk about, it does speak to, I think, people's different opinions on the workplace. There are people who absolutely feel like, work is a place that I need to better myself and get promoted and have more responsibilities and make more money. And then there are people who I gotta get a job to pay my bills, but I'm here to make friends. Scott Hall famously, you can either make friends or make money in this business. I've already got friends. Yeah. And she seems to be very much caught up in the almost like an Arrested Development where I'm just here for friends. And I'm only going to pick the friends that are most likely to not get promoted, which I think is an interesting thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on the character. I hadn't really picked up on that. Though, to get back to your initial question about her mom, is I think at the end of the first season, she sort of realized that there was some value to Mariner's way of doing things. And that's sort of why she said, well, maybe I should work with you instead of against you. And then first episode, they find out it's not really working out, but that there's more mutual respect between the two and understanding in the season. It's not perfect because these things will change overnight.
I think 2 or 3 episodes into the second season, she says, we're not going to work directly together, but I need you to keep doing what you're doing because sometimes the way you do things needs to get done.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. She's earned a bit more of acceptance and understanding and respect from her mother. And that sort of shows throughout the season with their relationship as they're trying to sort of put their relationship back together.
I think there's like a tacit recognition that sometimes things are going to get messy and who you're going to call.
Yeah, and I think it's where the first season focused more on the captain becoming accepting of Mariner. I think season 2's going a bit more Mariner learning to respect her mom and the way that she does things.
Another thing that I liked about this season, it was only one episode where they dealt with this, but so Boimler last season went over to Riker's ship, and there's a couple of, and I got to touch on how they conclude that, by the way, because it was really funny. And it was definitely like a throwback to a Star Trek thing. Yeah, they directly referenced it. But there's an episode in season 2 where they have a replacement come over, and he's a yellow shirt, and they go on a mission together, and he's trying to lead the mission. She's trying to lead the mission, and my favorite part of that whole thing is where they're doing the shower, and and she's like, she keeps turning up the heat, and he's turning up the heat. Now, they're competing with her, and they're burning everyone around them.
Yeah,
and she's, and where they're crossing hairs and butting heads is essentially she's like, you're only doing this to get promoted. I hate people like you, and I can't remember what he accuses her of, but they eventually work past it. They have an understanding. They complete the mission. And then just as soon as he's welcomed as part of the group, Boimler comes back from Riker's ship, and she kicks him out of the booth. And as they pull away, as they pull away on the shot, you could see him being like hurt by the experience. And, not every episode needs to be Baby Darkseid and, the universe collapsing or a Death Star being need to be blown up. Sometimes just a nice human drama about the need to be accepted is nice. It was, it was a nice little episode.
Yeah, agreed. I didn't pick up on him looking dejected at the end, but I'll take your word.
He totally did.
Yeah,
did.
I trust you. But yeah, and I do like that Mariner. She has that multidimensionality to her. She's not just a super ensign who knows more than everyone else and can do more than everyone else. She does have her flaws, but it's never to the point of making her an unlikable character or a terrible person. It's just she's not perfect like everyone else.
Right. So Boimler on Riker's ship, he's on a mission, and I think his whole arc there in that particular episode was, sometimes you gotta he's with like almost like a Marine crew.
Yeah. The Titan crew are very much more action oriented, much like you would expect a Riker led ship to be.
Yeah. And so he's with these badasses, and he ends up solving they do this again later on. Him and I can't remember the cyborg character's name, but
Rutherford.
Yeah, there's sort of this tacit recognition that sometimes you can solve problems with your brain.
Yes,
and not the Discovery way of shoot him in the fucking face. So with the Titan crew, he does something, and I can't remember what, but he's obviously using his inherent talent and intelligence to solve the problem. He gets everybody beamed off the planet, and when he gets beamed off, he ends up splitting into two, and that's how they resolve him both staying and leaving Riker's ship. His clone stays.
Yeah,
and then he has to go back to the Cerritos, which I thought was amusing. But later on, and I believe it's the episode where they think Mariner is like a double agent or a spy or something.
Yeah, she's like Starfleet intelligence, super elite assassin,
right?
Sort of thing. Yeah,
and they play on her relationships again, going back to what we started talking about, where she only friends the weakest amongst them because they're less likely to leave her. And Boiler and what was the cyborg character's name again? Rutherford, like believe that there's a whole scene there's a whole bit at the beginning of the episode where she beats their asses in a training exercise, and so they just assume like, oh well, the bartender said she was like this monster, I bet she is. And I can't remember what her rationale is for telling people that, but the solution to whatever problem they're having is like, oh god, what was it? It was something
there was a Ferengi running like a animal poaching operation.
They showed them how they can make more money.
Exactly. The solution was not go in and do a big action scene and rescue everyone. It was show them like, there's a much more profitable way that you could be running your business that isn't illegal.
Right.
Yeah. They come in with the big bazooka that they put together, and they hit the button, and it turns out to be like a projector, and they're giving like a business plan presentation.
Right. And Mariner says, sometimes you need the hammer, and sometimes you need, you need the carrot. You need the stick or the carrot. And that was also one of those ones that jumped out at me and ended up being really, really nice. Was her recognizing that her friends are not weak; they're different, which I think was a nice way for the writers to handle that.
Yeah, well, I like how, and this is very typical of more Golden Age Trek, is even at the beginning, like the coda to the show, like after they show her just like whipping them mercilessly in the I forget the name of the game, Anbu Shinju or something like it's some fictitious Japanese-ish thing. Riker and his dad played it in an episode of TNG, so that's where the reference comes from. But after that, you see them like playing like a game where it's all about negotiating, and Mariner's just like, oh, this is dull, like why are you guys playing this? But the two of them are like, oh no, it's really fun. And it was like, oh, I'm not happy. No, neither am I. Yay, we've achieved consensus.
Well, and the other thing is like
how they solve the problem.
Yeah, well, the other thing about that game, what I thought was a really funny gag, was she was like, "I'm going to go get more drinks," and she doesn't know if she's winning or not. And they're like, "Oh, we're totally kicking your ass." She goes away. They like clear the board. They're like she better not ever find out she was beating us.
Yeah, that was the very end of the episode, which I kind of wish they hadn't done. Like they sort of kept it as Boimler and Rutherford are good at this, and Mariner's good at everything else. It seemed like they sort of sacrificed the message of the episode for a joke.
The other thing I wanted to bring up was I thought it was an adorable episode with Tendi. I can't remember why the cyborg Rutherford lost his memory, but they're playing around a lot with that in the beginning.
Yeah,
and there's an episode where Tendi is trying to like diagnose him and fix him, and she's like chasing him with different things and trying to like shoot him up and stuff. And I it was something along the lines of, if he gets his memory back, he might remember that he doesn't like me or something like that. I don't remember what her whole paranoia was. Well, I think he's like dating somebody at the beginning of the episode, which
like his personality has changed, and she wants to change it back so that he'll always like her or something like that.
Yeah. But it's handled very funny. You know, romance is a very funny thing. People seem to look at it one way, but even like something like that, she clearly loves him on some level and is afraid that he'll leave her, and so she goes to what she knows. She tries to fix it.
Yeah, I actually really like that with the two of them. They don't really go into will they, won't they territory, but it's pretty clear that they have a special friendship, but a platonic special friendship.
Yep.
So kind of nice to see that for a change in a show.
So those are the major points that I wanted to talk about as far as the show. I mean, there was a couple of references to Voyager. Again, they had Riker on the show. By the way, I will ask you this: what did you think of the way they handled Riker? Because it almost felt like it felt like Star Trek fans kind of making fun of Riker, like by making him almost an exaggerated version of himself.
Yeah, he likes to drop jazz references whenever he can, which is never really something he did. It was like he enjoyed playing jazz, like that was part of his character. He played the trombone, but yeah, it was never something that he would say all the time. Much like Picard didn't talk about Shakespeare all the time on the show. It's clear that he appreciated the classics, but it's not something that he would bombard people with. But like again, with the tone of the show, it kind of works because they're just poking fun at things and not taking themselves too seriously.
There's the episode with Tom Paris, which they don't really do anything with him. He's just there. I don't think they really integrated him as part of the episode.
Yeah, it was more Boimler having something to do. Though best episode title.
Yeah,
we'll always have Tom Paris.
We'll always have Tom Paris. Those are the major points that I wanted to discuss. What any particular episodes jump out at you, or elements from these episodes that you wanted to discuss?
Sure. I mean, it's a bit harder with season 2 because with season 1, what was so interesting about it was just how good it was compared to expectations. Just because, like we were so used to Star Trek not being very good relative to what it used to be, that like you can understand how jaded people were towards this. But then to find out, it's like, oh wait, there's actually like a good writing team behind this that are actually doing good character work and having a blast and making a lot of fun, and obviously showing that they really like Star Trek and they want to do stuff with this. Like, I think there's sort of you could almost say there's sort of two types of writers in these types of shows. There's the ones that want to be there, and then there's the ones that have to be there. So you get the writers where, like, I feel like, say in Discovery, why not? I've kicked it already. I'm not. Why stop now? Like, I think that if Discovery got canceled and all the writers had to find new work, they just like, okay, I'm just going to go and write on whatever I get next. Yeah, I like it's a job to them. It's kind of like when they asked Chris Evans about being Captain America, he's just like, well, that's what they're making now. Like, you just sort of feel like he's not really like a comic book fan or a Captain America fan. It's just this is where the the good roles are. Right. If you want a successful career. So yeah, like if Westerns were popular, he'd be doing Westerns. It's just that sort of thing. And that's not to knock him, he's doing his career.
I mean, like, everyone acts, just as an aside, like Hollywood actors are looking for gigs.
Yeah.
And this idea that you have to be a passionate Star Wars person to do a Star Wars project is ridiculous. Like, Chris Evans doesn't have to be a Captain America fan. He has to be a good working actor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of my favorite stories is like Russ Meyer has said that he is not a Star Trek fan. He doesn't hate Star Trek, but he doesn't follow it. He's not really into the lore or anything like that. And this is the man that made Wrath of Khan, which many people consider to be like one of the greatest moments in all of Star Trek. And as much as that was just a job for him, he showed up. He did the work. He watched the show. He's like, okay, I get what this is. I have an idea for a good story.
Well, it was the same thing with Eric Kirshner with The Empire Strikes Back. Like, he wasn't like a world. Again, Star Wars was barely an IP at the time, but it was just like, hey, I think George Lucas sort of tacit realization that he needed somebody who had an idea, who had a real handle on movie craft, to come in and do his second Star Wars movie. And what do you know? It's the best one of the bunch.
Yeah, and even like Sir Alec Guinness, he's just like, I have no idea what the heck I'm talking about. What's an Obi-Wan Kenobi? But he showed up, he did the job, and
I love the Alec Guinness on Star Wars. He's just sitting in Tunisia, and it's like, I don't understand what any of this is, but sure, I'll say the thing.
yeah, I'm getting paid. So,
Yeah.
well, it's funny, like the whole thing where to give you a preview of when we talk about Obi-Wan, like Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor saying, like they want to do a season 2 of Obi-Wan, even though it's a limited series, and it's like, yes. I too like working more for more money.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we would like to stay employed, please. So of course, yes, season 2.
The blogs act like when these guys are like, oh, I'm totally down for a season 2. Like, oh, they really love no. They know it. They're not dumb. They know this is guaranteed work.
Yeah.
And the thing of it is, if you're a Hayden Christensen or Ewan McGregor, you totally do an Obi-Wan series so that you can go do like Gay Cowboys Eating Pudding as your next thing, which won't make any money, but you'll at least stretch as an actor.
Yeah, it's like to quote Sir Michael Caine, I haven't seen Jaws 4, but I've seen the house it bought for me, and it's lovely.
Right.
Yeah. But so yeah, like I too agree that you don't always have to be a passionate, in-depth fan. You don't need to be a Dave Filoni to do good work, but at the same time, I do think there are those that are just like whatever. We'll just throw in a bunch of references from whatever the reference people say we can do, and we'll just do our own thing and kind of make it Star Trek-y. But when you look at Lower Decks, she's like, these are people that love Star Trek. They are happy to live to work in that universe, and it shows. It really shows. Like in Picard season 2, where like we had to give this sort of tragic backstory about him being unable to prevent his mom from killing herself due to her mental illness, and that's the motivation for why he had to go into space and become a good person and help other people, because he just is processing his grief. Like, no, like he's just a good person because he's a good person, and he wants to go into space because going into space is cool.
Yeah.
You don't need some sort of tragic backstory and trauma behind every character motivation. And
everyone has to be traumatized now, David. Don't you understand?
Yeah, and you see that in Lower Decks with a lot of the characters. Like, you want to go look at the Warp Core? Yeah, I love looking at the Warp Core. The Warp Core is so awesome. Like, these are just people that are so happy to be where they are and think that this is just the coolest job.
Well, even at that, like, you talk about like MacGuffins and side quests, things to do. So the Tendi Beckett episode where they go off on an adventure together because Tendi has to go get something for a family heirloom for the doctor, who's a walking cat.
Yeah.
And, it's an excuse for them to have an adventure and connect with each other. And this is where they talk about, Beckett doesn't get to know people because they'll leave her. Tendi, rather, she has a whole thing about not wanting to connect with people. And so they end up connecting with each other over their lack of wanting to connect to other people. But they also have this rip-roaring adventure and near-death experience. The whole thing was they needed a box. They needed a box for the cat to scratch and
the joke at the end was brilliant. How of course they break the thing in transit, and they have a whole series of hijinks and misadventures trying to fix it, and every step things get worse, and in the end it's like, look, sorry, we messed up, and she's like, oh, I don't care about that, I just wanted the box. And of course the cat, so cats like to play with boxes, and it's like, bravo, I didn't see that coming, you got me.
Well, it worked. It was a very subtle thing with the animation, but the cat just like stretching in the back, going, like I had a good laugh at that. Not the least of which is because I also purr. All right, Dave, I'm gonna shut up here and just let you sort of take us home. Anything left unsaid? Any burning desires?
Yeah, I did like how they did some alternate pairings, because it's usually Rutherford and Tendi, and then Boimler and Mariner that are all together all the time, and they actually swapped them up for a couple of episodes. So it was kind of nice to see Boimler and Rutherford sort of being geeks together, and then Tendi and Mariner bonding eventually. I think it was cool to see sort of Tendi be among other Orions, and sort of how her place in that society is very different than her place on the Cerritos. Especially how she sort of has a bit of shame regarding her roots, because Orions are kind of the organized crime species, much like the Ferengi are the capitalist species, the Klingons are the honor-bound warrior species, yada yada yada. So like it was kind of cool to see that sort of change in environment, and sort of see a bit more of her character outside of the Cerritos. It was also nice to see like the different characters sort of growing. Tendi's becoming more confident and more capable. She's getting more difficult assignments, and in the end, she sort of gets transferred to a more.
And even Boimler, I don't particularly like the neurotic, nerdy foppish characters a lot of times. I think, not to go off on a tangent, but it almost, it just feels like the writers, like I just don't like those kinds of male characters, and it feels like writers kind of taking a shot at men in general from time to time. And in Boimler in season 1, it was like, come on, if you're this much of a wussy pansy, you wouldn't have lasted in Starfleet this long. And I liked how they treated him in season 2, where they didn't change him fundamentally, but they gave him some guts, they gave him some courage, and he was able to sort of get through things. He still has those moments of but he still comes through more often than not. And you can see that, and again, going back to what we talked about before, I like the fact that they said he can win the day with his mind. He doesn't need muscles, which I think was nice.
Yeah, I certainly understand a lot of the early criticism of Lower Decks, especially if you watch the first couple of episodes, because it is very much Mariner can do no wrong. She knows everything. She's a step ahead of the game at all times. And Boimler's just this naive putz who is humiliated all the time, especially after Discovery, where you have Michael Burnham, who is playing the identity politics thing. She's a black woman with a typically male name who's just the best at everything, and everybody loves her, and everything's about her, and all the events in the show are in relation to things that she's achieved. And you're just kind of like, oh, I'm just, anyone that criticizes her is pretty much killed or evil. It's just, that this is not an interesting character. And I don't like tearing other characters down to make other characters look good. Like, I think if you just have a good character that speaks for itself, no matter what the identity politics are. And I think, people respond to good characters regardless of, whatever identity tags you apply to them, whatever boxes they check. So I think once, as the show progresses and you start to see a bit more of how Mariner she's not perfect. She does have her issues. She's still a very capable person. They don't cut her down at all. It's just they show more aspects of her personality. And you see, as Boimler does gain experience, how he's, taken his experiences on the Titan and being put into more life and death combat situations, how now he is a bit more confident. He is willing to do a bit more dangerous stuff. Like they did the episode where they're all having to do the holodeck training scenarios, and everyone fails on theirs, and he does the escape from Borg cube one, which that's a tough one. The Borg are heavy.
What I loved about that was he kept redoing it to get a better score.
Yeah, and like he gets like a 76 the first time around, and he just like badasses it. He just ducks and weaves and shoots, and he gets through the babies and everything, and then he's like 76, I can do better, and you just see him over and over and over again, just getting to 100% in it, and you sort of realize that Boimler now actually has some skills. He can do more stuff, and he is not the same person he was in the last season. He's not a complete badass. He's still Boimler, but you see that he is growing and he's developing, and you even get in sort of within the last 2 episodes, Ransom sort of sends a more junior ensign or a cadet up to Boimler saying, hey, this guy knows everything that you need to know about being on the lower decks on the ship. Talk to him. He'll help you out. And you see that he is gaining some status and acknowledgement. And actually, I think another thing I liked about the show is there's a bit more interaction between the lower decks group and the bridge crew. Yeah, not just between Mariner and the captain, but you also have Boimler and Ransom, or I forget the security officer's name, but he's always great to see. And I love that they've got I forget the name of the species, but like one of the Darmok aliens as like one of their new security people, and every so often the translator breaks. I was so disappointed that after sort of things go, turn into a mess at the end, you just didn't hear him go shaka when the walls fell. But like it's kind of cute stuff with that, and good character work, and like I'm almost through my list here, but it's a very actually, could you just give me 1 second here to deal with something?
Okay. Well, before Dave comes back, let me go ahead and say I really enjoyed season 2. It's kind of doing some research on this, and I'll kind of read from the wiki here. McMahan said that the second season would combine standalone episodes with season-long character arcs and would take inspiration from the storytelling of Voyager, Deep Space Nine. In addition to that, Next Generation, he noted that many members of the crew had seen all previous Star Trek series, but they revisited specific episodes together, such as the the original series episode, A Private Little War, which introduced the Mugatos, which there's a really funny episode title in this, like Mugato, Hugato, or something like that, like tomato, tomato.
Yeah, the episode titles in this season are pretty good.
I can read a few of these. Like First Contact.
Yeah.
I Excretus. The Spy Humongous. An Embarrassment of Duplers. Mugato Gamato, that's what it is. We always have Tom Paris. Keishon, His Eyes Open.
Yeah, that's with the new security chief.
Yeah. All right, Dave. I think we're gonna call it for the evening, unless you got anything else.
I thought the episode where they go into lower decks across the different races was hilarious. You see like a Vulcan lower decks, Klingon lower decks.
Yeah,
the Packlids. I still think it's brilliant that they use the Packlids as the big bads for this, because they're just such a throwaway joke of a race, but they actually make them into something somewhat intimidating, yet not going to upset the power balance in the broader Star Trek universe. And at the end of the episode, they do Borg lower decks, and they're all just regenerating, like they're just sitting there. Like they're having a lot of fun. It was very sort of tongue in cheek, and I thought it was great. And the guest stars that they get on this is like the computer episode where they're having to transport the evil computer that wants to take over the universe. They got Jeffrey Combs to voice the computer, and he's done like a ton of different roles throughout various Star Trek shows.
I feel like didn't the solution to that was they just unplugged it?
Oh no, it was Boimler tricked him into. He's like, okay, I've plugged you into the navigation system of this ship, so we can send a distress call. And it's like, okay, good, now use my battery. And he plugs the battery in and is able to use the ship. It's like, haha, you fools! Now I'll use the ship's resources to build a swarm of drones to conquer the universe. Like, yeah, I lied to you. Like, you're not plugged into the navigation console. You've got the dimmer switch. I just gain your trust, so you'd let me access your battery. He's like, fools, you'll rule the day you mess with me. And he just starts like flicking the lights on and off, and standing there. Like they got for when the Borg Queen makes her appearance with Boimler's simulation. Like they got Alison Krieg to do her voice, and they even did Sonia Gomez, which is not the most obscure, but like the captain of the ship that looks like the Excelsior. They call it the Archimedes, I think, in First Contact. Like, she was a character in Next Generation for like one section of an episode, and then they never brought her character back. And she she's all nervous and she spills coffee on Captain Picard. And I even like it how one of her crew does something and just like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Like, oh, don't worry, I've done something far more embarrassing to a far more important person than me. And I think that okay. Like it's just like it's a joyful celebration of Star Trek we love, and a good show that just has it's just good characters and good stories.
The last thing I'll say about that is that they just don't throw the references out there, no context, just like remember this. Like it integrated well enough into the story to where if you remember it and you're a Star Trek fan, you're like, that's funny, and if you don't, it's like it still works. It still feels. The writing in Lower Decks feels organic and authentic, as opposed to like some people use previous IP where they just sort of hit you in the face with a dead fish. And you're like, I'm not getting anything out of this. It's nice that we all remember the thing, but the thing was not that great.
Yeah, so, and I even like there's one bit where they like make a sort of reference to another character, and then the person they're talking to is like, I have no idea who that is. Like, I'm a Spock person.
All right, well, that wraps up our review of Lower Decks. Tomorrow we'll have a page replay of Metal Hammer of Doom Overkill, The Wings of War. On Saturday, a re-airing of our very first On Trial we ever did. We kicked off that series with Big Trouble in Little China from John Carpenter, starring Kurt Russell, the old Pork Chop Express, baby. Woo! And then because it's July 4th weekend, it's going to be a bit before we have some new shows. So instead, we'll have another page re-air for Metal Hammer of Doom Twar Hell. And then and Everyone Loves a Bad Guy for Thor, because a week from tomorrow is Thor Love and Thunder. Allegedly, Jesse has a Thor Goddess of Thunder review, which is the 2014 Thor with the female Thor as being portrayed by Natalie Portman in the movie. So hopefully that'll go up on July 5th. And then in the evening, we'll be reviewing, it'll be myself, Robert Winfrey, and my son's threatening to come on to review Minions: The Rise of Gru. David will be back with us, as well as a few other people. We'll be reviewing Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then on Thursday, we'll be doing the Metal Hammer of Doom, unless I'm at a game night at my friend's house. We'll be reviewing Ailstorm, 7th Rum of a 7th Rum. So that's what's going on here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Dave is also going to be on the July 11th show for Halo. And that's it for David for a while.
I think I'm on Love and Thunder. I think I should probably try and be on Love and Thunder if there's room.
Right now, no one's on Love and Thunder except Robert.
Okay, well, if you need someone else for Love and Thunder, I'll try and get that done. And then, I think that's it for next month.
All right, I'll put you on for
next month.
I will put you on for Love and Thunder. All you had to do was ask. I don't assume anymore.
Yeah,
and I don't ask. So, all right, you're on for Love and Thunder. There you go. Your wish is my command.
And then I think it's Strange New Worlds after that.
You're gonna make me look, aren't you?
No, I'm pretty sure I'm on for Strange New Worlds. It's
now I'm actually curious to see what all else you're on. So yes, Strange New Worlds is actually the last thing I have you listed for, and that's September 20th.
Okay, yeah, I think the other thing I have is House of the Dragon in November.
No, that got cut.
Oh, that got cut. Okay, then.
After a certain point, I just stopped doing these, and I'm not adding any more television shows. So
fair enough. Yeah, no worries. That's fine.
Unless you can get Alexis to review it and without me, I'm trying to get Alexis, Jason, Jesse, and Robert to start hosting their own shows, so that because I'm cutting back.
Yeah.
So I think the cutoff was The Boys, and then after that, I'm done. I'm not doing anything else. So like. The next show that got announced after that was the Umbrella Academy, and I'm like, hey, someone else want to pick this up because I'm not reviewing it. So as far as like House of the Dragon goes, I'll watch it, but I'm more than likely not gonna review because I don't think I'm gonna have time with the only doing it 2 days a week. But if you can get Alexis to watch it, because I know and review it and can get her access to StreamYard. Again, I put that with all those people and Sean, and I was like, hey, get it together, guys. Give access to StreamYard out. Herding cats.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Like you, life is getting busy, so sometimes I don't have as much time to. And TV shows are tough because you just so much to do.
Not to dovetail into this, but that's why I cut it. When I decided I was going to cut back to only 2 days a week, I'm like, well, something has to go like permanently. And I decided, I already go to the movies once a week, so Damn You Hollywood's not going anywhere. That's an easy one to do. And even with like some of the streaming movies, it's 2 hours out of my day at best.
Yeah.
Metal Hammer of Doom is always very easy to do. I can listen to records while I drive.
Yeah.
What I don't always have time for is 10 hours of television.
Yeah. If it's a show I want to watch, and especially one my wife can watch with me, then that usually makes it a lot easier for us. But yeah, we don't always get that.
Yeah, I got lucky this week and I was able to get all 6 hours of Obi-Wan done between yesterday and today, but I don't always have that kind of time. So, and then in order to do it, I got to block out almost an entire day to binge through something. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to be doing this anymore. I'll watch TV casually when I have time. I think I just finished Snowfall today. I had like 2 or 3 episodes of Snowfall left because I got busy and I just never watched them. And today we had extra time between going to see Minions and doing nothing else. So like, I'm going to finish. Well, I'm going to catch up on TV that I actually like to watch and not reviewing. Would you believe that? I couldn't get anyone to review Snowfall with me. No one cares that the CIA brought crack to Los Angeles, David. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds interesting, but not quite in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And
all right,
I've got to have to. Yeah, so thanks everyone for listening to our behind the scenes look at Radulich Broadcasting Network. Where behind the scenes is part of the regular program, like our bonus is pre-included.
Yep. In a future re-airing of this episode, this will be the part that I cut. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us here on TV Party tonight. He's David Wright. I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.